Before we get started with today's interview, just a quick reminder, click the thumbs up, make sure you subscribe, and ding the bell so that you don't miss any of the great interviews that we have coming up. Now, on to today's interview. Welcome back, everybody. Today, my special guest is Dr. Christopher Fisher. Some of his pieces appear on the new National Federation of Music Clubs festivals list. Welcome, Christopher. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, Sam, for the invitation. It's a real honor. Thank you.
Well, I'm delighted to speak with you. And I'd like to have an opportunity to get to know you just a little bit as a musician and as a composer. So tell me about your earliest development as a musician. Do you come from a musical family?
Well, I guess you could say yes. My dad led worship in our small country church as I was growing up, and he has a beautiful voice. Both of my brothers also sing beautifully. So lots of singing, lots of music making in my family. I actually began my undergraduate studies as a choral music education major and sang throughout high school and throughout my university undergraduate studies. So singing has always been a part of my life.
Oh, that is really cool. And of course, now you're so well known as a pianist and as a duo pianist with your wife, Catherine Fisher. What led you to the piano?
Piano really has been at the core of my music making from the very youngest ages. My parents tell me that when I was very young, I would plunk out tunes on the little toy piano that they had in our living room, tunes that I had heard on television or on the radio. So that sort of prompted them to sign me up for lessons and purchase our first piano. So music making really has been an integral part of my family's life. And really the fondest memories I have going all the way back to the beginning are of my grandmother singing hymns to me as she was rocking me as a child. So again, some of my earliest memories go back to that. So as far as the piano goes, I started lessons when I was about 4.5 with the pianist at our local church, and had some wonderful teachers growing up, always inspiring me to make beautiful music. I entered university studies sort of with this idea of doing choral music education and piano. And I had a wonderful teacher during my undergraduate studies who really inspired me and encouraged me to pursue piano and piano teaching particularly. And so really it was at sort of my junior year in my undergraduate studies that I made the shift full-time to piano as my focus. And the rest is history, as they say.
When did you start composing, and how did that begin to figure into your musical journey?
That's a great question. I have to confess, as a young pianist, I was one of those students who always struggled a little bit to remain focused in my practice. So I would spend a great deal of my time either sight reading through new music or just improvising. And so because also of my shared love of choral music and the piano, my first formal composition was actually a choral anthem that I composed for my high school choir that was premiered at our commencement ceremonies at graduation. So that was my first formal composition. Of course, lots of improvisation happened as a youngster, but those were my earliest days of composing.
Oh, very cool. I love how you use that ability to improvise to kind of lead you into a path of composition. How cool is that? So who were the people who continually nurtured you as a pianist and as a composer and as a musician?
I actually never formally studied composition. It has some great theory teachers throughout my training, but never had a private composition lesson. But I feel I've been largely trained really through my voracious reading of music. I loved reading through the latest educational compositions by the wonderful publishers, music publishers. And it was actually during my undergraduate and graduate studies in piano pedagogy that I actually would sit down and sight read through, scores and scores of the latest educational piano music for long stretches of time. So I think in many ways, my compositional training has come from really the wide range of fantastic music by all of these great, amazing composers of educational music throughout the years.
I love how you have that broad basis of knowledge in pedagogical piano repertoire and kind of saw what everybody else has done and you were able to then take that and make it into something that is uniquely yours and your own. That is super cool. When you are composing pedagogical piano works, where do you seek inspiration?
I think for me, inspiration is derived really from a lot of different things. But I think most of the time it's derived particularly from the needs of my students. These are the things that kind of drive my compositional activity. So when I write, I'm often thinking about specific artistic and technical principles or skills that I'd like to develop in my students playing. And so these are the things that often guide me in that process.
Excellent. That makes a lot of sense. And in that same regard, what role do restrictions play in your composition?
I think it's very important to have a clear understanding of the performers, the target population that one is composing for. So composing educational music is in many ways different from composing for, say, a concert pianist. So understanding what typical students at various levels are capable of handling is, I think, very, very important for composers. Now, having said that, I think we can't trap ourselves into this mindset that easy equals banal, right? Young students are capable of much more than we think they are. And thanks in part, I think, to the trend of this tandem teaching reading and rote, which I think we're seeing a lot of teachers employing very successfully in their teaching these days. So in my pieces, I'm always thinking, what can be a stretch goal in the piece that I'm teaching? What will elevate the student from where they're currently at in their playing to the next level of musicianship? So I'm thinking of where they currently may be, but one element that might take them to the next level.
Wow. I love all of the thought. And you said something that I want to point out because I think it is so brilliant and so wonderful that sometimes we as teachers underestimate what our students are capable of. And I think that sometimes we inadvertently limit our students' progress just because we say, well, this student is 7 or 8. They surely can't handle that. And every now and then you come across a student who can handle some pretty amazing things as a 7 or 8-year-old. So I love that attitude that we don't want to limit our students, that we really want to see what their potential is and help them grow to reach their fullest potential. How cool. Many composers seem to have trouble getting started on compositions. They have trouble getting past that blank page. And I also hear from many composers that they've started a million things and finished almost nothing. How do you overcome those two common compositional challenges?
That's a great question. I think for me, again, having a specific goal in mind. A lot of the work that I have done at the piano as a composer has been sort of a commission from my wife in her work as a publisher. Many of the pieces that I've written for the method Piano Safari have been, I need a piece with this specific interval in mind, with these specific parameters. And so again, knowing what that goal is, and then really kind of thinking about what a student might connect with, what might engage the student, what might inspire them. And then from there, I like to just improvise. I sit down at the piano, think of a key that would be appropriate for that particular student, and then really just improvise from there.
Excellent. I love that insight into your compositional process, too, talking about composition that stems from improvisation. That is really great insight. How did you connect with your publisher?
Well, my first educational pieces were published by Alfred several years ago, probably 15 years or more ago. And I had just started doing a little bit of composing at the time and reached out to Gail Kowalczyk and E.L. Lancaster then at Alfred and said, hey, could I send you a few pieces that I'm working on? And they looked at them and agreed to publish them. And so one of the pieces, Midnight Express, has been on the Federation list over the years. Just reaching out to the publisher. And then from Alfred, my wife began publishing music. And so I've been doing most of my work with Piano Safari.
Excellent. Speaking of Piano Safari, we'll make a point of linking your pieces on the Piano Safari website in the description of this video so that all of our viewers can easily find them. That is excellent. So, what advice do you have for young aspiring musicians or young aspiring composers, people who are just getting started? Perhaps they're in high school and they're coming to realize music is my thing. I think I really want to do this. What is the advice that you would give them?
Yeah, I know we keep talking a lot about improvisation, but I think this is a skill that I think has unfortunately been pushed aside in many piano teaching studios. It's for many years, it's been reading, reading, reading. And of course, that is a key goal that we all have and value as teachers. Again, musicians must be able to read and read well. But I think equally important is this exploration of the capabilities of this marvelous instrument that we get to play, and through improvisation, right? Just exploring what the instrument can do. For me, I really encourage young composers, young musicians, just to carve out time in their practice, just to sit at the instrument, put their hands on the instrument, and really have no goal in mind, but just begin to make sounds. Some of my most meaningful music making experiences have come from just doing that, sitting in my studio, placing my hands on the keyboard and seeing where things take me. Sometimes the sound is quite unpleasant, but other times it's quite wonderful and kind of leads me on a journey that I wouldn't have experienced had I not taken the risk to do so. So I think improvisation is so critical, and I think as teachers we really need to make that a part of what we're encouraging our students to do. I know for me, when I was younger, when I would improvise, my parents would say, "Hey, was that on your assignment for the week? Go back to reading your pieces," right? And so I think that happens a lot in homes across the country.
Absolutely. Give me some tips. How can I help my students get started in improvising?
Yeah, fortunately, there are lots of great resources today. I mean, most method books, as you know, have now integrated improvisation as part of the method, as part of the curriculum. And so I'm delighted to see that taking more of a center stage in methodology. There are other auxiliary resources out there that I think are just really fantastic. Of course, the pieces that are found in books like Pattern Play and Forrest Kinney's great materials, I find to be really, really useful in my own pre-collegiate teaching. I think particularly for teachers who feel like this is not a skill that they were trained in, the step-by-step guidance that these books provides teachers and students is really, really beautiful and valuable.
That is really helpful. Thank you so much for that. So something I hear from a lot of my student composers is that they really have trouble with time management, that they feel like I have school and I have extracurricular activities and I have to practice my instrument. How do you find time, and what is your advice for helping people to find time and manage their time so they have time to compose?
Generally speaking, if this is something that one really enjoys and wants to make a part of their work, I think it's important to kind of to schedule that in to one's daily or weekly schedule. For me, I have a day of my week. My Thursdays are my research, writing, and practice days. And so I've carved that out of my schedule where that's what I do on those days. I'm editing a book right now. I'm writing. I'll do a little composing on those days. The bulk of my practice really happens on Thursdays. Unfortunately, I have to cram a little bit given my teaching schedule. But I think really, if something is valued, we find time for that. And the way that we do that is we actually schedule that in our daily schedules.
That is excellent advice. And I love what you just said, that if we value it, that if it's truly, really important to us, we will find a way to do it. And making time for that is super, super important. So what do you feel are some of the biggest challenges that are being faced by composers today?
I think for some composers, it's easy, again, to be intimidated by this idea that, for hundreds and hundreds of years, great composers have gone before us. what could I say that they haven't said already? And so I think the intimidation of a fear that we might not have anything to say can actually limit people from taking the risk of composing. Oftentimes, there are composers who feel drawn to a particular sound, but they are concerned that that sound might not be received well by audiences, by students, by pianists. And so I think, again, there's a lot of a courage that composers have to have to compose, right? We have to be vulnerable because as we're finding our voice, there's a deep sense of personality, right? It is our person. It is who we are. And so being comfortable with that as we compose, acknowledging that that voice may very likely and should probably change over the years. We see that with all of the great composers, right? They developed in their sound in many ways, right? So I think being willing to take the risk, to be courageous, to have your voice, to find your voice, and then to share that voice with audiences.
How do you think that people can do that and find their voice? And how did you find your voice as a composer?
Yeah, again, one of the driving forces for me as a composer is, again, this tremendous responsibility that I feel when I'm composing, particularly for young pianists. I want to give them something that they'll just absolutely love to play over and over again, something that keeps them coming back to the piano, and something that really will inspire them to share their music with others. Really, my goal as an educator, my goal as a composer, really my goal in life as a musician is to foster and develop a lifelong relationship with music making, with the students that I get to teach. And so when I'm composing, those things are always in the back of my mind. So really trying to inspire my students in that way. As I said before, I'm always hoping to develop a harmonic vocabulary that's intriguing, that's engaging for students and listeners.
You've mentioned throughout the course of our conversation that you do multiple things, that you are writing books, that you are publishing, that you are, and I know from your great YouTube channel, which we'll link in the description, that you are a performer and you are a music educator and you're a composer. So you have this really cool multifaceted career. Talk to us about the pros and cons of doing a lot of different things.
I think in many ways it's a blessing and somewhat a curse, right? Going back to that idea of time management, I think that's the biggest challenge, right? Is to find time to do all of those things. The beauty of it, however, is that I get to do all the things that I really love to do. I think I would characterize myself first and foremost as a teacher. I love to teach. I hope to inspire the students that I get to work with, right? It's a blessing, a true blessing to do the things that we get to do as music teachers. But also I love to play. I love to make music. I love to compose. I love to write. I've been very blessed to be able to write several books over the years and to edit some books. And so being able to do all of those things gives me great joy in life. But again, as I said previously, I think it's finding the time to do all of those. But the beautiful thing is that, as I said, there are seasons where I do more of one thing than others, and that's perfectly fine. And then, there will be a season, months later where I get to do more of something else. And so I think for me, that gives me not only this sense of freshness and a source of inspiration, but it kind of keeps me moving forward as a musician, as a teacher, as a composer.
What do you hope to be known for?
My hope is that I will have touched the lives of my students, that I will have inspired that lifelong relationship with music making, I'm a firm believer that, Bach and the Beatles can coexist. I believe in teaching all types of music. I believe in making music that brings joy to not only ourselves and to others. And so at the end of the day, my hope is that I will be known as someone who has inspired people to make music, not just today, but throughout the course of their lives. And yeah, if that happens for one or two folks, I think it will be a success.
That is a beautiful answer. Dr. Christopher Fisher, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your wealth of knowledge about composing and about ensemble playing and a whole bunch of other things. I am so grateful for you. Thank you so much.
It's been a complete joy. Thank you so much, Sam, for the invitation.